Who's ready for some college football? Raise your hand if you are. Just make sure you don't drive off the road if you're in the car. Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Pratt & Whitney Stadium at Rentschler Field on an absolutely gorgeous Thursday afternoon. We welcome you to the debut of 2023 Uconn Football Game Day presented by the Hard Auto Group. I'm Bob Joyce. Later, you'll hear from Adam Giardino during the broadcast. Mike Raspino, Wayne Norman with me. A couple of big thank yous to give out as we get started, because you might notice if you're hanging around, the Cloder Farms Doghouse got a paint job and new windows this year, so we want to give Peter Welty and MJ Sullivan and the gang at Cloder Farms for the makeover and the landscaping around the doghouse done by JH Property Services, LLC. Complete exterior landscape maintenance services, jhpropertyservices.com. Guys, this is the first time in a long time that we go into a season, yeah, there are question marks, but there's optimism for the first time in a long time. And we haven't been able to say that in a while.
No, that's a great word. I think optimism is what most teams start the season with in college football, pros too. But in this program, the previous 3 years, before last year, times were tough. Victories were few and far between. And so optimism turned to pessimism. I think Jim Mora coming here last year got people thinking positive, got the team playing better about midseason. They went on a nice run. They won 5 out of 6 games here at Rentschler Field. That got people interested. And then they got to a bowl game. No one saw that coming. 6 wins? After 4 wins in 36 games the previous 3 years. So, yes, absolutely, optimism. I love that word.
And, Wayne, the great thing about this is because, yeah, Randy recruited well. We get that. But there was so many guys going into the portal. Well, maybe 3 guys in the portal, 3 to 5 guys. And a few of them are big names, don't get me wrong, and we wish Nate Carter all the best. I think he's going to do great at Michigan State. But the guys stayed, which means they're a year older, they get to work in the weight room, and they're all familiar with the system rather than going through this endless circle of youth, not ready to play. And this year, totally different.
Bob, I would take another step in that optimism thing. It's not just the fan base that has optimism for where this season's going to go. I think the players now feel that coming in much more than they did 1 year ago at this time when there was some uncertainty, not sure how the team was going to respond to the not-so-good years that were before that. The transfer portal has changed college football in so many ways, and for that matter, college basketball too. And one thing I was thinking about was maybe a kind of convoluted parallel was how Dan Hurley improved his men's basketball team at Uconn through the transfer portal. The one guy you think of is Tristan Newton, but he had 4 guys who all played roles on that team that eventually won a national championship. How did Uconn go from 1 win to 6 wins in the first year under Jim Mora? Well, I think that he had some key players in that transfer portal. Just one comes to mind to be the guy that played some of the big-time college football programs, the linebacker Brandon Boyer-Randall. He was the second leading tackler on the team last year. But he addressed the needs through the transfer portal, and he made UConn a better team, and I think he's going to do that again this year.
Yeah, and Jake Guidone obviously was the big help at center last year for the offensive line. And let's start there, guys, because no matter who the coach is, what team you are across the country, if your O-line and D-line aren't any good, things aren't going to go well regardless of what skilled players you have. The bulk of the offensive and defensive lines are back, and they're deep. And now we have talent around it to see what the Huskies can do, and that's going to be one of the more exciting things about tonight and the first few weeks of the season, where 4 of the first 5 games are right here in East Hartford.
Yeah, opportunistic if the Huskies can be in these first 5 games, get off to a great start. That could really put an imprint on this season. Gordon Samus, I want to mention him, the offensive line coach. Got to have great coaching up front. We've had great health last year. 5 guys, I don't think there was a game missed.
That's the one area that they stayed healthy all year.
You stay healthy on the offensive line, you're going to make some stuff happen. And when I say stuff happen, Wayne, 190-plus yards on the ground, I mean, very few teams in college football could say that. And UConn said that all last year.
Bob just mentioned Jake Guidone, the transfer to UConn graduate transfer portal. And he's the one that's missing, the starting center. So they have moved Yakari Walker from the backup left tackle. He'll be the center. That's the only X factor you have on that offensive line, which does not only have the experience coming back, but they've got some depth. They've got guys who've been in the program a couple of years. So that should be a strength on this Uconn football team. One of the questions they had, though, was A, quarterback, B, the wide receivers. And he was able to stock that through the transfer portal with Jordan Porter, Brett Buckman, two pretty good guys, and the return of Cam Ross. Can Cam Ross, a tremendous receiver, led the team in receiving in 2019, can he stay healthy for an entire year? If he can, UConn will have a passing game that was lacking last year.
Yeah, and Kevin Claricius, we know what he can do. James Burns supposedly is a speed burner, and I know there's been a lot of talk about Kylish Hicks as well. They got a lot of depth there. But let's start with the quarterback, an Italian, Fignano, playing the quarterback spot. Experience is what apparently earned him the job in a very hard-fought quarterback battle in training camp.
Yeah, and his knowledge of the University of Maine's offense run by Nick Charlton, the offensive coordinator now with UConn. He was the head coach there. So I felt like coming into camp, he probably had a chance to win the job, but Bob, he won the job. No coach ever put someone in position at the number one spot in the depth chart unless they think that player can help them win. So there were no favoritism. There was no, well, he played for Charlton before. It was a legit competition in camp with Roberson and with the guy from last year who was, I thought, had a fabulous freshman year, Zion Turner. And he beat them both for the job. Now, you got to hold the job. You got to move the offense. You got to put points on the board. You got to throw for more than 110 yards a game. And if they can do that, UConn could be a formidable opponent throughout the season.
I think a lot of the fan base was surprised when Fignano got the starting gig. Taquan Roberson was the starting quarterback on the opening game last year at Utah State. He got hurt, was out for the year. I think the assumption was that he'd probably be the heir apparent to it, even though Zion Turner ended up playing all 13 games last year. I asked Coach Mora during the course of the week, I said, does your game plan for this game include using more than one quarterback? In other words, this is one of those deals where you start Fignano, maybe put Roberson in for a while in the second quarter. A lot of coaches do that. He says, I have never done that. He gave an example. He said, the only time that I did that last year was in the Myrtle Beach Bowl when Zion Turner was having some troubles through a couple of interceptions. I had to settle him down. I had to take him out. So for a little bit, they sat him down and then eventually put him back in. But he's basically committed to Joe Fignano. I suspect if Fignano has a rough start to this game today, he might go to the bullpen. But right now, it's Fignano's job to lose.
Now, we are at Gate C here at Pratt & Whitney Stadium. There's a lot going on. The Husky Walk is right in front of us. That'll be a little later on. Apparently, the Huskies are on their way here. To our left, with cahoots with Power Station and iHeart Events, there is a concert that will be going on in just a little while, around 5:30. And we're expecting a huge crowd. And let's go in that department, guys, because it's not just an opening night for UConn. It's a big football game, a big crowd, maybe the biggest crowd we've had in 9 years, potentially could be here tonight. Given everything that happened this summer with realignment, and David Benedict is trying to start to spread the word with the report that he put out yesterday. This is a huge game for a lot of reasons, not just what we're going to see on the field, but UConn's got to have a good showing here tonight to at least set the tone for the season, but maybe putting thoughts in other people's minds that, hey, this is a team on the rise, and maybe they would be a good choice for a conference realignment down the road.
Well, especially against an ACC team.
Yeah.
There are 3 ACC opponents. Duke coming up at home, at Boston College. UConn, those are important games. I don't want to put too much emphasis on it. Jim Moore is only in his second year at his program. He got it on its feet. Mm-hmm. He's going to reload, try to take another step this year, have a winning record. All that's important. But as you mentioned, the realignment landscape in this country is completely blown apart. Everybody's going everywhere. West Coast teams playing in the Midwest. West Coast teams are now playing in the Big 12. I mean, it's crazy. So the ACC is one of the Power 5 conferences that hasn't really made any major moves yet. And a lot of people who are more knowledgeable about it than me feel like it's time for them to do something and be proactive, because how many more choices are there for good college programs to welcome into your fold and try to increase the eyeballs and the potential television rights and viewership for your conference? Besides the ACC, they got 14 now. I think they could use a couple more. And to me, UConn will be a great participant in a conference like that. But it's not up to me.
And Bob, going back to your original point about home game, Rensselaer Field, they were 5-1 here at the Rent last year. This is a place that even though they didn't pack the Rent, haven't done that for a while, but the place can still become loud. The coach and the players talked about that relatively small crowd for the game against top 25 Liberty last year that really was a game that put Uconn in their bowl eligibility. And they knocked off that team, and the coach and the players both said how loud that relatively small crowd was. This place can be loud. This place can be rocking. With a bigger crowd tonight, should be even louder and even more rocking going on. So I think Uconn really wants to protect home turf, not just tonight, but all season long.
All right, lastly for you two. I mean, obviously the coaching staff and the players believe they can win every game. Realistically, as us folks who follow the team, what's a good record for this team this year?
I'm the born optimist. He's the voice of reason. So I'm going first. I think 8-4. But I'm always optimistic.
Yeah, I think that's doable.
It has to fall your way.
Sure.
Let's face it.
Sure.
Got to take care of business at home. You got to get 1 or 2 on the road. UConn only won 1 road game last year. That was at FIU. Right. So to get to 8-4, you got to do some things that you haven't done in a while. So I'm optimistic about it. And now, Mr. Norman.
I think 8 wins is doable for this team. It is not a particularly challenging schedule. There are some winnable games on this schedule. But at this point, they're coming off a 6-7 season and a bowl game last year. I think, number 1, be bowl eligible. Get to a bowl game. Number 2, improve on last year's win total. Get to at least 7, and then we'll talk.
Okay, that sounds good. Gentlemen, we will talk to you at 6:05 on the network.
Be there.
Wayne Norman, Mike Crispino, along with Adam Giordino, will have the call. Kickoff is at 7:32 tonight. We'll learn a little bit about the Wolfpack of North Carolina State from their sideline reporter, Tony Haynes, an interview that I did with him in Raleigh last Friday. That's coming up next as you're listening to UConn Game Day on 97.9 ESPN Hartford, ESPN Radio, 1300 New Haven, and the iHeartMedia app.